January 12th, 1942, 3 hours. Off Cape Sable, 230 kilometers southeast of Nova Scotia. The British cargo ship SS Cyclops, her 9,076-ton hull cutting through the icy waters of the North Atlantic. 181 crew members standing routine watches. Captain Leslie Kersley believes the war won't come this far west, right next to America. He's wrong. At 3:03, something moves in the dark waters 2 kilometers below the ship's bow, U-123, German submarine. Commander Captain Lieutenant Reinhard Hardegen studies his target through the periscope. After 3 weeks of sailing, his first target. 2 torpedoes. SS Cyclops sinks within minutes. Of 181 men, only 83 reach the lifeboats. Of those, 40 freeze to death in the ice-cold waters. Total casualties, 98 sailors dead. This is the first victim of Operation Paukenschlag. German for drumbeat, the most deadly and least known submarine campaign of World War II. The story of an operation that terrorized America's East Coast with just 5 submarines, bold enough to enter New York Harbor, close enough to see Manhattan's lights, yet lost in the pages of history. December 11th, 1941. Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini declare war on the United States. Just 4 days after Pearl Harbor, the European war has crossed the Atlantic Ocean, arriving at America's doorstep. At the German submarine base in Lorient, France, 50-year-old Admiral Karl Dönitz spends long hours at his maps. Dönitz, commander of the German submarine fleet, is a cold, calculating, ruthless strategist. His intelligence reports are crystal clear. America's East Coast is defenseless, no convoy system, minimal anti-submarine patrol, and most importantly, our the coastal cities' lights are still burning, as if there's no war. In December 1941, Dönitz has 91 submarines total, but 23 are deployed in the Mediterranean, 39 are in shipyards for repairs. Only 5 are actively patrolling the North Atlantic. The remaining submarines are either in training or waiting for fuel ammunition resupply. When Hitler approves the plan, Dönitz is allocated only 6 Type 9 long-range submarines. 1 experiences mechanical failure before setting sail. Only 5 submarines remain. 5 submarines against America's 3,000-kilometer East Coast. Mathematically, it seems impossible. But Dönitz knows something beyond mathematics: shock and despair. The operation's name is Unternehmen Paukenschlag Timpani Strike, or more commonly translated as drumbeat. Dönitz's intention is clear: shatter America's sense of security, show them ships sinking at their own doorstep. On December 18th, 1941, U-125, Commander Ulrich Folkers, departs Lorient. December 23rd, U-123, Commander Reinhard Hardegen, sets sail. December 24th, U-66, Commander Richard Zapp, embarks. December 27th, the last 2 submarines, U-130, Commander Ernst Karls, and U-109, Commander Heinrich Bleichrodt, depart together. Each submarine carries sealed orders. These orders will only be opened after crossing the 20 degrees west longitude line. Inside are targets for different sections of the American coast. No detailed nautical charts exist. Hardegen receives only 2 tourist guides for New York. One contains a foldable map of New York Harbor. This map is from a brochure printed for the 1939 World's Fair. The submarines are loaded with maximum fuel, food, and ammunition. Each carries 15 torpedoes. Crews range from 48 to 52 men. Type 9 submarines are massive machines, 76 meters long, weighing 1,120 tons. They can make 18 knots, 33 kilometers per hour on the surface, 7 knots, 13 kilometers per hour submerged. Their range with full fuel tanks is 13,450 nautical miles, approximately 25,000 kilometers. British intelligence Y service intercepts signals of German submarines leaving the Bay of Biscay. At the submarine tracking room in London, Roger Wynne tracks the Type 9 submarines crossing the Atlantic with minimal evidence and correctly identifies the target area, North American coast. On January 21st, 1942, Wynne sends a detailed warning to Admiral Ernest J. King: heavy submarine concentration off North American coast, 5 submarines already in position, total of 21 submarines in transit or deployed. The warning is ignored. In January 1942, America's East Coast isn't ready for war. Not at all. On January 12th, 1942, Admiral Adolphus Andrews, commander of the Eastern Sea Frontier, is warned that 3 or 4 submarines are about to begin operations against coastal shipping. In reality, 3 are already there, others en route. Andrews' response goes down in history. He refuses to establish a convoy system, reasoning that this would only provide more targets for submarines. This thinking is tragically wrong. The convoy system has been tested and proven by the British and Canadians since World War I. British and Canadian allies share their experience, sophisticated organizational structures, and submarine combat tactics with the Americans. But America isn't listening. Admiral Ernest J. King, Commander-in-Chief of the United States Fleet, Commerce, harbors deep antipathy toward the British. Historians will write that King hated the British almost more than the U.S. Army. General Dwight D. Eisenhower said of King after the war could have ended earlier if someone had shot King. King's reasons for rejecting the convoy system exist but are insufficient. Not enough destroyers, no anti-submarine vessels, few patrol aircraft, but the British are offering help. King refuses that too. On December 7, 1941, the Eastern Sea Frontier has only 4 air squadrons, 3 PBY Catalina seaplane squadrons and 1 PBO squadron, modified Lockheed Hudson twin-engine bombers. For coastal patrol, the Coast Guard uses a few Grumman Widgeons and OS-2U Kingfishers. But the real disaster is something else. Coastal cities are still keeping all their lights on. New York, Boston, Miami, Jacksonville, Atlantic City, all illuminated at night as if there's no war. The U.S. government avoids asking coastal cities to turn off their lights. Why? Bad for tourism and commerce. German submarine commanders won't believe it when they see it with their own eyes. January 12th, 1942, 3 hours. After sinking SS Cyclops, U-123's commander, Reinhard Hardegen, continues southwest toward the American coast. Hardegen is 28 years old, tall, thin, with sharp eyes. He didn't actually start his career as a sailor, but as an aviator. In 1936, pilot in German naval aviation, but in 1939, he crashes, severely injured. His injuries are so serious he should normally be removed from active duty, but Hardegen hides his injuries, manages to transfer to U-boat service. On December 11th, 1940, he receives his first command, U-147, a small Type IID submarine. On his first patrol, January 17th, 1941, he makes a major mistake. Attempting to torpedo British destroyer HMS Achates, the torpedo explodes prematurely, causing serious damage to U-147's bow. The ship is barely saved from sinking. Hardegen's career is in jeopardy, but Dönitz gives him a second chance. On May 16, 1941, he receives command of the larger U-123. U-123 is a Type 9 XB submarine, a huge opportunity for Hardegen. He needs to prove himself. To avoid early retirement due to his injuries, he must successfully complete this operation. January 14, 1942, nighttime. U-123 arrives off Montauk Point, Long Island. Hardegen doesn't have proper charts but doesn't need them. Montauk Point Lighthouse provides him navigation assistance. A lighthouse that should be shut down during wartime is still operating. Shortly after midnight, Hardegen's lookout spots a ship. The ship is silhouetted against the illuminated coast. The 6,200-ton Norwegian tanker MV Nornes, carrying 12,200 tons of crude oil from New Jersey to Liverpool. Hardegen fires 3 torpedoes. Nornes sinks. Hours later, a blimp spots the part of the sunken ship's hull protruding from shallow waters. Of the 40-man crew, 39 are rescued. But what truly happens in the next scene is incredible. January 15th, 1942, early morning hours. U-123 approaches New York Harbor. From the conning tower, Hardegen can see the lights of Manhattan skyscrapers. He can see the Empire State Building. He can see the glow of Times Square. He can see the silhouette of Coney Island's amusement park attractions. Hardegen later writes in his memoirs, "I cannot describe this feeling in words, but it was incredible, beautiful, and magnificent. We were the first to arrive here, and for the first time in this war, a German soldier was looking at America's shores." U-123 is on the surface, at the mouth of New York Harbor. He sees no warships, no patrol aircraft, Just lights, ships in silhouette, and the city's noise. Hardegen doesn't fire torpedoes. They have missions further south, off Cape Hatteras. But this moment, this single moment, becomes a symbol of how audacious and how successful Operation Paukenschlag is. In the following days, Hardegen systematically hits his targets. January 14th, Nornis, 6,255-ton tanker, sunk. January 15th, Coimbra, 6,768-ton tanker, sunk, 36 crew killed. January 17th, Norvana, 9,577-ton cargo ship, sunk. January 19th, City of Atlanta, 5,269-ton cargo divided by passenger ship, sunk, 46 people killed. January 19th, Siltvira, 2,538-ton cargo ship, sunk. January 24th, Culebra, 3,798-ton tanker, sunk. January 25th, Pan Norway, 9,201-ton tanker, sunk. In just the first 2 weeks, a single submarine, U-123, sinks or damages 9 ships, totaling 50,766 tons. Dönitz signals Hardegen to drummer Hardegen, "Bravo, you beat the drum well." U-123 isn't alone. The other 4 submarines are also taking action. U-66, Commander Richard Zapp, night of January 19th, off the New Jersey coast, hits the Canadian passenger ship SS Lady Hawkins. The ship is sailing under blackout conditions and zigzagging, but the coastal lights silhouette it. Of 320 passengers and crew, only 71 are rescued 5 days later. U-130, Commander Ernest Karl, sinks 2 ships on January 13 T-14th. Karl stays on the surface for minutes, looking around, seeing no response. U-109, Commander Heinrich Bleichrodt, on January 19th, hits the Panamanian tanker Nornis off Cape Hatteras. U-125, Commander Ulrich Folkers, sinks 6 ships on his first mission. When January ends, the statistics are horrifying. 29 ships hit in the Eastern Sea frontier, 16 ships sunk, 1,219 crew and passengers killed. The U.S. Navy didn't fire a single shot. February 1942, 16 more submarines arrive in the area, 34 more Allied merchant ships, and 1 warship are sunk across a wide area from Nova Scotia to Venezuela. On February 12th, off Cape Cod near Monomoy Island, the cargo ship Dixie Sword is sunk. America's response is minimal. Minefields are laid at harbor mouths, mobile guns are placed on shore, coastal patrol vessels and aircraft are put on alert. But it's not enough. And worse, the U.S. Navy is hiding the truth from the public. News media accepts government censorship. The loss of sea vessels and thousands of sailors is quietly concealed. While people walk on beaches, shop in malls, ships are sinking on the horizon. Sometimes explosions can be heard from shore. Sometimes bodies wash up. Sometimes oil spills pollute the coast. But the official statement is always the same: a minor incident. May 4th, 1942, U-507, Commander Harrow Schacht sinks its first ship in the Gulf of Mexico, the 2,686-ton cargo ship Norlindo, west-northwest of Key West. Throughout May, a ship sinks almost every day in the Gulf of Mexico. 115 ships are sunk in the Atlantic, nearly half of them in the Gulf of Mexico. Why is it so easy? Because almost nothing has been done for shipping defense in the Gulf of Mexico. Ships are still sailing alone, still following marked routes, still lighting navigation lights at night. In March, most of the 92 ships lost by America are south of New York, independently routed vessels. April isn't any better. American defense mostly consists of designated shipping corridors where merchant ships sail at wide intervals. These corridors are patrolled with strict routine by the few available U.S. Navy destroyers and patrol vessels, and covered by military and civil air patrol. The result, paradoxically, is a safe operating area for submarines, away from other ships' interference and, between regular patrols, away from enemy warships. To conserve torpedoes, submarines often begin sinking ships with heavy machine gun fire. An unforgettable scene. April 11th, 1942, Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Reinhard Hardegen, on his second patrol, returning with U-123, spots a tanker, SS Gulf America, 8,081 tons, full of gasoline. Hardegen fires a torpedo. The ship catches fire. Then he surfaces and positions U-123 between the burning ship and the shore. He delivers the final blow with the deck gun. Thousands of people on the beach, families picnicking, children playing in the sand. Suddenly, a massive explosion on the horizon. A column of flame rises to the sky. The U-boat silhouette is visible against the flames. Gun sounds are heard. Hardegen writes in his log, "All the vacationers saw an impressive special show at Roosevelt's expense. A burning tanker, artillery fire, the silhouette of a U-boat. How many times has this been seen in America? 19 crew members die. People from the beach try to rescue survivors with lifeboats. Roads are jammed with vehicles heading to the shore. Everyone wants to see this unprecedented show." Hardegen stays too long. Aircraft come from nearby bases. Destroyer USS Dahlgren is directed to the area. U-123 has to dive, barely escapes. May 1942. The British finally send help. 2 mid-ocean destroyer groups are directed to the Caribbean to defend British convoys, and several trawlers come to America's east coast. This modest increase in destroyer force might be the only thing the U.S. Navy needed. In mid-May, the first American convoys begin operating in the eastern sea frontier between Key West, Florida, and Hampton Roads, Virginia. May 14th, 1942. The first organized U.S. coastal convoy sails from Hampton Roads to Key West. Convoys will eventually extend to Halifax. The result is immediately visible. In areas where the convoy system starts operating, losses drop dramatically. The British and Canadians have been saying this from the beginning. By August 1942, the convoy system expands. The submarine threat in U.S. coastal waters is being brought under control. Operation Paukenschlag and the continuing Second Happy Time campaign, January 1942, August 1942, ships sunk, 609 ships, totaling 3.1 million tons. Approximately 400 of these between January-August 1942, submarines lost, only 22 U-boats. Human casualties, approximately 5,000 merchant sailors killed, more than twice the 2,403 killed at Pearl Harbor. Tanker losses, 73 American tankers lost in the first half of 1942. 22 British tankers lost in March. 3 of 4 major Canadian tankers lost between February-May. This is approximately 1/4 of all shipping sunk by submarines throughout World War II. Historian Michael Gannon called this America's second Pearl Harbor and attributed responsibility for the failure to Admiral Ernest J. King's inaction. President Winston Churchill called on the U.S. Navy to organize coastal convoys in March 1942, but with little effect. Reinhard Hardegen made 2 patrols total in Operation Paukenschlag. The first in January 1942 sank 9 ships. The second in March-April 1942 sank 9 more ships. Throughout his career, sank 22 ships, 2 later refloated, total 115,000 tons of shipping. Awarded the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, on April 23, 1942, he was invited to a banquet by Hitler and Dönitz. When U-123 returned to Lorient on May 2, 1942, Hardegen's active U-boat command career ended. On July 31, 1942, he left command of U-123 and was assigned as an instructor. Until the end of the war, he worked in torpedo development, submarine training, and finally commanded a naval infantry unit. Post-war, arrested by the British, mistaken for an SS officer with the same surname, spent a year and a half in a prisoner camp. After being released, he entered the oil trade business in Bremen, ironically working with Texaco, the company that owned ships he sank during the war. He served 32 years on the Bremen City Council. Died in 2018 at age 105, the last U-boat commander of World War II. In an interview late in life, he said, "I wasn't a Nazi. I did my duty for my country, not for Hitler." The men who died in those cold waters off America's coast, British, Norwegian, Canadian, American, Panamanian sailors, died because their governments failed to protect them, because pride prevented cooperation. because bureaucracy moves slower than torpedoes. Reinhard Hardegen, standing on U-123's conning tower, watching Manhattan's lights, knew he was witnessing history. What he didn't know was that this moment, this audacious, unbelievable moment, would be forgotten, buried under Pearl Harbor smoke, hidden by government censors, lost in the larger narrative of World War II. But the numbers don't lie. 609 ships, 3.1 million tons, 5,000 men dead. Operation Paukenschlag, the drumbeat that echoed along America's coast, the operation history forgot. The next time you stand on a beach in New York, New Jersey, Florida, or the Carolinas, remember, 80 years ago, the war came here. Torpedoes exploded within sight of shore. Men drowned within hearing distance of families at dinner. And for months, America couldn't or wouldn't stop it. The Atlantic remembers, even if we don't.